Welcome to the Transport and Infrastructure Select Committee. Good to see you this morning. Thank you for presenting so early. We've allocated you 15 minutes this morning. You can take your written submission as read and invite you to leave some time for questions at the end. Over to you.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I just want to start with a couple of comments and then just open up for discussion. So nobody knows better than a politician how important it is to have the community alongside you and supporting the decisions you make. And so the purpose of my role within Making Rail Work has been around community engagement, encouraging media interest, getting people talking about this project. And I've been doing it now for just over 10 years, having been part of the original group that started lobbying for Tahuia before it was even called Tahuia. It's fair to say that that was a long, slow train. And the reason for that was we were simply a group of passionate train people. There were various government representatives, but we didn't have the robust background that Making Rail Work now has. So that has evolved significantly. And as a result, what I've seen in the last 2 years has been more interest, more engagement from decision makers than what we had in probably 10 years with Tahuia, or before it was called Tahuia. So that has now evolved into this entire strategy that sits in between the work that Katrina talked about before in terms of governance and the structure of what we're proposing, and the technical detail that's coming after me that Michael's going to talk about. So I really just want to give that as a preface and just allow you to ask me questions if you've got any.
Thank you. Susan, in your submission, and I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts. One of the challenges, as you will know, is around the pure economics of such infrastructure and the investment required into regional passenger rail. Can you just run the committee through, I guess, the economics, how you view the economic position of such an initiative?
So I think this is what makes this model of the cooperative different to what we were saying before, which was, somebody should do something and the somebody should be the government. So the government needs to put up $5 billion and create a rail system that essentially the taxpayer is funding that most people won't use. And so I guess the difference between what that was only 2 or 3 years ago, when we think about when Tahuia got set up, and it was entirely funded by regional council, local council, and central government, to saying, actually, who else is out there that might want to be part of this? What communities need to be part of it? What developers do? If you think about when a road gets built, there's a development contribution for a road. Why are we not thinking about, could there be a development contribution for a rail siding if it's in a new town? Are there organisations out there that have an interest in investing in rolling stock or whatever the thing is? So I think what you do is bring in other organisations. It may be New Zealanders, it may be foreign investment, it may be via some kind of levy like a rate or a tax, it may be large corporations. And in many ways, if you look at the Fonterra model, that's what we've used as kind of the gold standard.
Thank you. Teresa and Gobi.
Well, you may have, thank you first of all for your submission, but you may have sort of touched on this already with your answer to Shannon's question, but kind of building on that, we also have, well, probably more in Tangi's area than mine, but it goes through my area, and that's the Capital Connection, which is funded by regional councils rather than, And so I guess I'm really, and we also had, sorry, just to preface, we also had a really passionate, keen group of people that came across together, from across that whole kind of area where the Capital Connection goes through, to make sure that we could keep it and that it still goes 5 days a week for our workers, which it does, and it's great. I guess my question is around, you talked about before it was Te Huia, that was kind of you guys, you came together. Can you just talk us through like how you did that? It's more of for me to go, hey, so I can, anyone watching this from our areas can say, hey, we can also do what Susan did. So yeah, if you could just talk us through how that.
So there's more detail in the submission, but what I would say is that and as politicians, you will know this, the key to success came when we got the media on our side, and as a result, we got the public on our side. So once the media started talking about this as a possibility, and this is something that could really happen and make a difference economically, socially, climatically, that was when we started to get some traction. And having that credibility, that the advocacy sat slightly at arm's length from government, which is a slightly different model to this, because we're talking about a far more collaborative, cooperative model. But it was absolutely about having those champions. And honestly, David will tell you, because I was a flea in his ear for 10 years. It was just chugging away at this and making sure that the topics stayed relevant. People understood why it was important, that there was an option other than taking a car somewhere, that there wasn't, yes, there's an economic benefit, but my tax dollar doesn't help pay for a road in Southland that I'm never going to pay, that I'll never use. So changing that narrative around what rail was and why it needed to exist, that was the turning point.
Yeah, well done you, Susan, thank you.
Just in terms of the costs, Susan, so the investment up front, I think from your submission, you're suggesting that government would do that upfront investment. But I guess when it comes to passengers, how do you see the cost being applied to customers or users of the service?
So my personal view is that public transport doesn't have to be free, because actually there's no such thing as free, it's taxpayer funded, right? So if we say public transport's free, what that actually means is that you and I are paying for Julianne to go on the train. That's just how it is. However, we also know that rail gets treated as the poor cousin of transport modes. So convincing a passenger to spend $70, $80, $90, $100 on a ticket, it's never going to happen. However, when you look at the real value of the real cost of what that person's costing to be on a road, it's probably about the same. If you think about what the IRD say it is for 83 cents a kilometre, right? If you use a car. So I think there has to be someone mentioned before, Teresa, about having something across the country and a rail strategy. You actually need to include ticketing in that. What's it going to be? You can't have something that's $20 in Auckland and $1 in Horowhenua.
Yeah.
Thank you. Honourable David Bennett.
Thanks, Susan, and well done on your submission and your group submission. And the cooperative idea, I think, is a great idea. I think it's actually got some legs to take forward. The one thing I'd like to see incorporated into it is it really linked to significant growth sales.
Yes, and you'll see in the next report that will be presented in February, you will see where we've identified growth cells along that road, because there are many small towns from Pairiri particularly through to the bottom of the Kaimai, in that area where you could have along the railway line small towns growing along the model of the Sleepyhead model at Okaro at north of Huntly. Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's the real guts of it, and Teresa, to her point down there, Otaki might be growing, but at a percentage level, it's nothing compared with the growth you're getting out of that region in a quantum level. And they've got potential to grow there just as much as that Waikato link has. And I think that's the next part of the equation that's really needs to be emphasised. And with your cooperative model, I think you're actually gelling it together nicely. There's still some issues around environmental and that until it's electrified, we don't really get the gains that we perceive. But I think just well done. I think you've done a good job on this concept, and I think if we can take it that next level, it'll give a bit of economic impetus to what this committee's doing.
And that will be coming. We are working on that next fulsome report as we talk.
Okay, great.
Hey, thanks very much, Susan. And when that report becomes available, I'll just invite you to send that to the Select Committee as a follow-up. That would be very helpful. And thanks very much.
February, we're aiming for the full, it'll be, you know, a tome in February that will be delivered to the Minister with the next stage of this is coming. So this is not just an idea. This is a very structured, well thought through process. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for your submission, both written and oral, this morning. We really appreciate it. Tēnā koe.
Thanks.